Now, Kia Motors made a big bang entry into India at the Auto Expo, and ever since there has been a great anticipation about the vehicles it would launch after, of course, the Creta competitor. Now, one of the vehicles that I strongly believe Kia should launch in India is the Rio hatchback that we have with us here today. And the reason why I believe this should be launched in India is because this shares the platform with the Hyundai i20, which we already know is such a successful hatchback in the Indian market. Now, before we go ahead and review this car, I must tell you this is not been launched in India, and this is not going to be launched in India in this current format. This is a European spec model which has been imported into India. Now, what are the changes you can expect in this car when it's launched into India? Well, that's what we are going to find out on the show today. If and when the Rio is launched in India, you can expect the design of the car to be largely same as this European spec model, and the most striking part of the front, well, it is the grille. And ever since Kia cars have got this kind of design up front, you can see in the recent years they have got a lot more dynamism in their design, and that I believe is going to resonate very well with the young audience, the young buyers that we have in the Indian market today. Complementing this dynamic grille, again, you can look at the wraparound headlamp. Very sleek, they've got a good design, LED DRLs, projector units, modern, in sync with the times. Towards the side, again, you've got these very good looking alloy wheels. Now, this is something I do not expect to be launched in India because this is a European spec model, so it's got larger wheels. In India, you can expect them to be at max 16 inches for the top variants and 15 inches for the low variants. Of course, the rubber too will be changed. This has got low profile rubber. In India, you'll have higher profile rubber in interest of ride quality. Now, unlike the front of the car, the rear is not that striking, but that doesn't mean it isn't attractive. It's got a very clean look. The tail lamps again look good, especially at the night. The illumination effect is quite nice, and overall the design at the rear merges well with that of the front and the side. Now, some of the other important changes that you can expect on the Rio when launched in India is that this car right now sits quite low. It's a European spec model, so of course the ride height is quite low, but that will change when it comes to India. So in a nutshell, the Kia Rio has the right kind of design to make it into the Indian market. Now, although it shares the platform with the i20, both cars have a distinct visual personality, although there is a slight similarity in the silhouette. Especially at the front, the Rio has exactly the kind of design that would appeal to the young urban buyers, and we've seen it with the i20. A premium design definitely works. People like it, and this is the right kind of design for the Indian market, and Kia should just get it as early as possible. Now, the interiors of the Rio is something that makes it very different from the cars we are used to seeing in the segment today. The likes of the Maruti Suzuki Baleno, the Hyundai i20. There's a sense of familiarism in the interiors of these cars, but this truly stands out. If you look at the overall design of the dashboard, again you can see the design here, the curves they've given here, and it's got a soft leather touch here. We've got this touch screen here. It's a small touch screen, but it isn't worth talking much because when and if launched in India, you can certainly expect this to be replaced by a larger touch screen. Of course, that will get Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, which has become the norm of the industry these days. Beyond that, the steering wheel, again, it's a nice chunky steering wheel to hold. It's got all your audio, MID and the cruise control buttons here. The center console is good. It's got climate controls at the bottom. A lot of space here which has been planned well. It's got this surface that will ensure your phone, your wallet do not get scratched. You've got ample connectivity options in the form of a 12-volt socket, a USB and an aux point. Couple all of this with good seats, a great looking interior, good space, great build quality and material quality, and seats that really offer good support. There's also a sunroof which is electronically operated. So what you get is a cabin that has a lot of premium value, and we've already seen it earlier with the success of the i20 that car, despite being the most expensive in its segment, was one of the highest selling cars. In fact, the highest selling at one point of time until the Maruti Suzuki Baleno came in. So, I think Kia has got that ground covered very well. It has got all the basics right. All it needs to do is make some changes, especially in the infotainment area. They need to get a larger color touchscreen, at least minimum 7 to 8 inches, with Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, inbuilt navigation, and of course beyond that I think the cabin is perfectly fine. So let's talk about the driving part and the powertrain of the Kia Rio. Now, the Rio that we are driving, this, as I told you earlier, shares the platform with the Hyundai i20, and as a result, the engine in this is from the same family of engines that you find on the i20. So this is the same 1.2 liter petrol unit. The power output, the torque figures, they're pretty similar, and there's no point in really going ahead and discussing those numbers because this engine is in a European state of tune. Now, if and when this car is launched in India, the engine will be specifically tuned for Indian conditions. Same is the story with the 5-speed manual gearbox. Again, it's a very smooth unit, slick throws, easy to use. But again, I think when launched in India, the ratios will need to be changed significantly. Right now, the ratios suit European driving conditions, but for Indian driving conditions, and especially in pursuit of higher fuel efficiency, the gear ratios again will need to be altered. Apart from that, you can expect the same 1.2 liter engine, a slightly different state of tune than what you see in the Hyundai i20, and that means that sharing parts, sharing components, sharing expensive systems such as engines will allow Kia to offer competitive pricing on the Rio. Now, one of the strongest points of the Kia Rio is its ride and handling. Now, again, keep in mind, as I told you earlier, this has a setup, the suspension setup, the tire, the wheel setup is for Europe, but still, fundamentally, the chassis, the suspension does a great job of keeping the car stable at high speeds. Even on surfaces filled with undulations and at triple-digit speeds, the Rio maintains a very calm composure. It doesn't really feel hassled, and you can still have a lot of confidence in the car. And that is something that I am yet to see in this segment. Now, of course, when this car is launched in India, there could be some changes to it because, of course, the length of the car would have to be chopped off a bit. That could result in a reduction in the wheelbase and, of course, slight changes to the suspension and all of that. So there will be a difference in terms of the ride and handling of the Rio when it is launched in the Indian spec version. But the basic characteristics I expect will be the same. Again, in terms of safety, the story should be the same. What you can expect is a package similar to what you see on the Hyundai i20, as both of the cars will be sharing a bit of the same parts bin, and you can expect dual airbag, ABS, EBD as standard on the basic variants. The higher variants would sport 6 airbags. And well, the car that we are driving also comes with a lane departure warning system, and you can be pretty certain that if this car is launched in India, that system will not be retained in the car, as our roads anyways do not have proper marking, so the system is pretty much useless in our country. Now, talking further about the driving feel, well, again, the steering is very precise, and it's just a point and shoot affair. Around corners too, the Rio feels quite happy to go at high speeds. There is minimal body roll, and the grip from the tires is good. In the Indian version though, as I said earlier, the height could be raised a bit, so the body roll could be a little more pronounced, and the only way to curtail that would be to stiffen up the suspension, which I think Kia wouldn't do in India because that would be compromising the ride quality, and that is a very important aspect for Indian consumers. The Indian spec version might not be as sharp handling as the Rio we are driving right now, but still I expect it to be right there at the top of this segment, and I'm hoping that Kia maintains this positioning for the Rio. Even the brakes on this car, again, they are very nice. You've got a 4-wheel disc setup, and the braking feedback again from the pedal is good. The initial bite is good. and the car stops with a lot of confidence. For Indian, the spec version, again you can expect the discs at the rear to be traded in for drums, which might bring in a slight compromise in terms of braking efficiency. However, that said, I expect it to be in the league of the cars that are in the segment right now. So having driven the Kia Rio extensively over the past few days, I can safely say the Rio is the right product for an Indian market launch. Now when it's launched in India, well, you can expect changes in terms of the design, features, the powertrain, all of that I already talked about to you a short while back. So overall, the Rio makes a strong case for itself. But what Kia should be careful about is the fact that they shouldn't go down the road of cost cutting too much and try and match the prices of, say, the Maruti Suzuki Baleno or the i20. Instead, what Kia should do is position the Rio in a premium manner and offer a strong value for money question for the consumers. So in the end, well, Kia hasn't really put an official timeline or a launch date to the Rio, but I am strongly convinced that the Rio will be considered for the Indian market, considering the fact that the premium hatchback segment in India is a growing one and is of great volumes. If you like this video, please hit that subscribe button. For anything else from the world of wheels, please log on to www.expressdrives.com. Till the next time we meet again, please obey all traffic rules, wear a seat belt and a helmet when riding a two-wheeler.